That Tekken 8 video was a real doozy to edit for, but it did take quite a while to put it all together. Maybe I should do something simpler. What should I go for next? Well, we're on episode 13, so I guess I should fit the theme of unluckiness with something not great. And given that you've clicked on this video already, you know where this is going. Street Fighter 1, released in arcades in 1987 by everyone's favorite game company, Capcom. These guys have a lot of great games in their lineup, dating as far back to the resurgence of video games after the Atari crash of '83. Ghosts and Goblins, Mega Man, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry. The list is nigh endless of great titles and characters under the Capcom umbrella. And Street Fighter is one of those flagship franchises, the primer to set the template for the fighting game genre going forward. Street Fighter is a very important game. At least, the sequel is. The original game is nowhere near as influential. Nobody talks about Street Fighter 1 as much as the numerous sequels, revisions, or spin-offs that spawned from the success of Street Fighter 2. But I am in the habit of doing these games chronologically, and I was willing to give this game a chance. Was that a mistake on my part? Is this game still worth revisiting nearly 40 years later? Here's some real-life trivia on this game. It was worked on by two dudes who would become head developers for SMK after Street Fighter, Takashi Nishiyama and Hiroshi Matsumoto. I had to look this up on the Street Fighter wiki because all the credited developers go by aliases. There were two different models for the arcade machine for this game. First has a familiar 6-button layout that became the standard from here on out. The deluxe version of the arcade machine had two pressure-sensitive buttons that dictate the strength of punches and kicks depending on how hard you press them. Unfortunately, these buttons were prone to malfunction, I can't imagine why, and were too expensive to replace. And you may notice from the Angry Video Game Nerd episode, but there was a home port for the TurboGrafx CD that was confusingly retitled Fighting Street. Did you also know that were several computer ports handled by a third-party company named US Gold, who would try to make their own sequel to Street Fighter named Human Killing Machine? Nah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole I don't want to dive into right now. I do not own the TurboGrafx CD, nor do I want to emulate any of the computer ports, but I do own an arcade perfect port courtesy of the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, as well as the one on the Capcom Classics Collection Remix for the PlayStation Portable. I originally first experienced the first Street Fighter via the PSP port, and my first impression of it wasn't great. Then I played it again for the 30th anniversary, and it wasn't any better. Then I played one more time for this review, and yeah, this game still struck out at this point. Street Fighter 1 is revolutionary for a lot of things, but not its gameplay. I'm jumping ahead, let's look at what we got here.
Round 1.
The plot is very simple. You play as Ryu, an up-and-coming martial artist from Japan, competing in the Street Fighter tournament, a competition where warriors from around the world duke it out to see who's the strongest. It's hosted by Sagat, a Muay Thai master of Thailand who seeks a worthy opponent. You can also play as Ryu's best friend and training partner Ken if the second player jumps in. He's exactly the same gameplay-wise in this game, making him the Luigi to his Mario. Regardless of who you play as, you face off against dudes from 4 different countries until you reach Thailand to defeat Sagat student Adon and the big man himself. But that's easier said than done. At the start of the game, you have the choice of which country to start off with, between USA, China, Japan, and England. Each of these countries has 2 guys to fight against. In America, we have Joe, some generic white dude with an equally generic white name, as well as Mike Bison, who's not to be confused with the boxer in Street Fighter 2. England houses 2 bouncers, Eagle, the refined gentleman, and Birdie, the brash thug. China has Lee and Gen, the latter having more relevance than the other, and in Japan we have Retsu, who wouldn't reappear until Street Fighter 6, as well as Geki, a ninja who may as well be Ninja Gaiden Man. You're expected to defeat all these guys, as well as the 2-0 duo in Thailand, while they try to gouge as many quarters out of you as possible in the process. The game is a one-on-one 2D fighter with 3 punch and kick strengths. Unfortunately, your normal attacks are pathetic in terms of damage dealt, and have a wind-up time before they come out. In contrast, the enemies can melt your health bar in at least a second with little to no effort. It also doesn't help that your movement on the ground is abysmal in terms of speed. What is this? Ryu's just awkwardly shuffling around backwards and forwards here. This makes you default to jumping around like an idiot to get anywhere, but that leaves you wide open for attacks. So your regular attacks suck, and getting around is a pain. How do you win fights in this game? There are also 3 special moves you can perform by combining special joystick movements with button presses. Quarter circle forward plus punch does the Hadoken, a fireball that travels full screen and does good damage. Forward down down forward plus punch does the Shoryuken, an incredibly short range uppercut that does incredibly high damage on hit. And quarter circle back plus kick does the Tatsumaki Senpukyaku, a spin kick combo that can hit multiple times. It has a long startup time compared to the other 2, and I find it unsafe to use in comparison. You'd think you just do the motion plus the button to do a special move, but the input rating on special moves is weird in this game. You could do it correctly multiple times, and it only comes out occasionally, until you realize how it actually works. You have to first hold down the attack button, then do the joystick motion. Then, as soon as the motion is completed, you let go of the button, and now you get the special move. It's so specific and counterintuitive. How's anyone supposed to figure that out on a limited pocket change in the 80s? Especially when the computer-controlled opponents have an overwhelming advantage over you in every way possible. To be fair, the guys in America and Japan are no sweat. Their AI is dumb as bricks. But when you get to England where Birdie suddenly kills you in 2 jumping swings, or when you notice hitting Lee isn't working, that's when you realize this game turned up the dickhead dial a few notches. Some of these guys are relentless and give you no room to counterattack whatsoever. It's especially true for Adon, where you may as well concede after he gets that first flip kick in. And it doesn't help that you're constantly wrestling with the sluggish controls while these assholes are kicking your face in. It's almost as if the control scheme itself is a hidden second opponent that you're constantly fighting against. Also, the game feels like it's falling apart at the seams at points. Slowdown is a very common thing that happens, and I cannot count how many times that screwed me over, mostly because it eats your button inputs while it's trying to catch up. I also know some of the basic rules are rigged against you. So I get up to Sagat, and he's a big jerk in this game, right? I got 1 round off of him, and we got a double knockout in the 2nd round. And then he wins the 3rd round, winning him the match with 1 point. What the fuck, game? You're telling me that we got the exact same number of wins and he gets the victory? This exact scenario happened 3 times, and to make matters worse, I didn't get the point in a double KO when he's up a round. That is bullshit. I've retried this match so many times that my ears are bleeding from his theme song. This whole soundtrack is balls, man. Usually Capcom games have great musical tunes, and there's a competent composer behind Street Fighter's score, but the instruments chosen seem to be deliberately handpicked to make the most ear-grating noises imaginable.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
After a gajillion retries, I don't care to count how many attempts I recorded, I finally beat Sagat. But I don't feel like I won legitimately, more like sheer dumb luck won for me. But I don't care. Ryu's now the king of the hill, so I guess this implies he retires from street fighting to pursue a career of selling propane and propane accessories.
I'm gonna have to kick your ass.
Street Fighter 1 sucks, dude. I'm sorry, but this game is not aged gracefully at all. The graphics are bleh, the music is ear-piercing, the controls are whack, the AI is frustrating to fight against, and worst of all, it wasn't fun. This game physically hurts to play on account of the shitty controls making me push the buttons harder than I reasonably should. There is merit to Street Fighter 1 though. It standardized the familiar 6-button layout that every fighting game would take notes from, and it introduced us to long-lasting characters that we'll see more of in the future. I'm really struggling to find positive things to say about this one, but really, that's all I've got. I'm honestly surprised they made later games after this one, but Capcom wasn't exactly done with Street Fighter. Cut to 1989, where the classic beat-em-up Final Fight hit the arcades. This game takes place in the same continuity as Street Fighter, and was even originally supposed to be an offshoot title, Street Fighter 89, and with that game's success, there came an incentive to give the world the true sequel.